It is often observed that some moments in life arrive softly, not with a grand proclamation, but with a subtle whisper. On that tranquil Thursday afternoon, sunlight cascaded softly onto the kitchen floor, enveloping the house in a profound sense of calm and quietude. Julian arrived at the clinic, a place that held the promise of healing yet whispered of uncertainty. The housekeeper left at dawn. After concluding my discussion with the vineyard manager, my gaze fell upon the laundry basket resting by the stairs. The laundry belonging to Luca. He habitually failed to notice details. The young individual, at the tender age of 22, remains rather disorganized. I felt a sense of apathy. Caring for the small details for him brought a sense of fulfillment. A way to stay linked. Cradling the basket, I ventured into the laundry room, where I commenced the gentle task of folding clothes, a soft melody escaping my lips. His garments bore the fragrance of cedar, mingled with a subtle trace of citrus, probably from his shampoo. My hands moved instinctively until they found a pair of navy sweatpants, their fabric wrinkled and bunched at the hem. In that instant, everything transformed. At first, I simply felt a bulge beneath the fabric. I absent-mindedly ran my thumb over it, maybe a seam, maybe a drawstring. Yet, the weight and shape were undeniably clear. I paused to gather my thoughts and steady myself. I remained motionless. I stayed there a moment longer, my fingers tracing the surface gently. Longer than they should have been. Just the right duration to paint my cheeks with a delicate blush, long enough for a deep realization within me to stir awake. A feeling I hadn't encountered in ages. I allowed the trousers to drop, as though they were flames withdrawing from the edge of a counter. Yet, that moment had slipped away. The image lingered in my mind, forever etched into my memory. Thick, stifling, disquieting. My heart raced with a fervor that made me almost expect Luca to walk in and ask about my state of mind. I would have conveyed to him that I was fine. Yet, I found myself not in that position. In that instant, that minor misstep ignited a chain reaction that I found myself utterly unprepared. At first glance, my life seemed perfect. A magnificent estate set against the backdrop of Napa Valley's lush vineyards. Along the winding driveway, rose bushes stood in graceful alignment. As spring unfolded, the sweet scent of lavender drifted softly through the open windows. Every room basked in the warm embrace of sunlight, showcasing lofty ceilings and intricately crafted wood beams that spoke of wealth and enduring elegance. At the age of 48, I found myself reflecting on nearly 2 decades of marriage to Julian Hartwell, a respected cardiologist known for his firm handshakes and remarkable ability to remember names at charity events. He consistently exhibited a serene composure. They frequently commented on our luck in possessing all that we wished for. Indeed, it appears we have, in some measure, accomplished that. Yet what lay hidden was the quietude that persisted beyond those majestic oak doors. How his touch transformed into something remote and devoid of warmth, a mere hand placed on my back during gatherings, accompanied by a fleeting kiss on the cheek before slumber. In a moment suspended in time, I felt the embrace of love through the warmth of a gaze, accompanied by the tender pressure of a hand resting softly at the small of my back. It felt as if Julian could peer deep into the essence of my being, yet in reality, he was not truly perceiving me at all. We shared the same bed, yet it seemed as if we existed in entirely different realms. I jested that I was starting to look like a dress showcased in a shop window, elegant, immaculate, yet trapped behind glass, untouched and unworn. Julian brushed it off with a light-hearted laugh in those days. I wonder if he truly grasped that my words held a kernel of truth beneath the surface of jest. Then arrived Luca. He bore no ties of blood to us. At the tender age of 16, Luca faced the heart-wrenching loss of Julian's dearest friend and his beloved partner, both of whom perished in a devastating car accident. We embraced him wholeheartedly. In those days, he remained silent, withdrawn, and shattered, yet, as time unfolded, he evolved into something entirely new. He stood tall and thoughtful, radiating a calm power that was apparent in everything he did. He carried himself with grace. At the age of 23, he found himself on the cusp of graduation, still residing in the familiar comforts of home while diligently setting aside funds for his impending journey into graduate school. There were moments when I caught myself staring at him a fraction too long over dinner, taking in the sharp contours of his jaw and the steadfast intensity of his gaze as he spoke. It was not a yearning. Not at this time. I kept that thought at the forefront of my mind. During most of his teenage years, Luca called me Eve instead of Mom. Despite the frequent assumptions that I was his mother at school events or within the community, I opted to let the misunderstanding linger without correction. In some ways, I discovered it to be quite pleasurable. It brought clarity to the situation. It came into existence. All felt palpable. From the instant he entered our lives, my affection for him mirrored that of a mother's for a child who has faced deep sorrow. With care, I crafted his beloved meals, softly nudged him to remember his allergy medication, and placed a tender kiss on his forehead as he set off for school. I observed him closely, not just from a sense of duty, but because of a deep bond that quietly flourished in the midst of the sorrow we shared in those moments together. A transformation started to take shape. It revealed itself slowly over time. It slipped in gently, reminiscent of the quiet shift in seasons that happens before one notices the leaves starting to drift away. His voice grew richer and more resonant. His shoulders grew wider. The delicate spirit of youth had waned, replaced by a more unforgiving and palpable existence. Young women started to connect with him. At first, he would merely brush them aside. Thereafter, he put an end to any further conversation regarding them. He grew ever more silent, increasingly distant. Not cold, but rather as if he were holding back a weight far too heavy for one so young to bear. I endeavored to ask gently, "Are you okay?" He would often nod and assert that he was simply tired, but his eyes told a story that contradicted his words. In time, I found myself unable to recognize the child I had once nurtured, as I began to see the man he was destined to become. Honestly, it sent a shiver down my spine. Indeed, it was not merely his reflection that captivated me, but the profound understanding it unveiled about my own self. There are instances when he occupies my thoughts, even when the moment feels all wrong. Watching him run his fingers through his hair, or how he stood barefoot at the wash basin, sipping orange juice straight from the bottle, and I felt an incomplete desire, not fully formed, but small sparks, peculiar and unwavering, like glowing embers from a fire I thought had long been snuffed out. I continually reminded myself that it bore no importance. After enduring solitude for such an extended period, even the faintest glimmer appears as a form of redemption. It started as a faint feeling, a delicate flicker that I found difficult to pinpoint at first. A flutter stirs within me, breath momentarily caught, warmth rising to my cheeks without explanation. In that moment, guilt surged through me, sharp and overwhelming, as I grasped the true meaning behind those emotions. Despite my reluctance to admit it, I understood that I was not destined to see him in that way. Certainly not Luca. He is no longer the boy I once nurtured, not the young man who transformed our house into a home, who left his shoes by the door, who continued to savor his coffee from the same beloved mug he had treasured for years. 16. I comforted myself with the thought that this was just a fleeting phase. Hormones, solitude, and perhaps a touch of sorrow. An unusual feeling that seeps in after upholding the illusion of normalcy for a prolonged duration. Still, it lingered. It nestled deep within me, quietly and steadfastly. I would watch him chuckle at something on his phone, his eyes crinkling at the corners, and a terrible yet wonderful warmth would blossom in my chest. I loathed it. I yearned for it. And I loathed the fact that I yearned for it. The most challenging part was that I felt a surge of vitality once again. It wasn't confined to just my body, though that element was indeed part of it. A faint hum resonated within me, as though my very being was awakening to recollections I thought I had long entombed. Yet beyond that, I felt a profound sense of recognition. Luca genuinely perceived me, truly perceived me, as if I remained a woman, not just a wife or an object within a residence adorned with exquisite items and entrenched habits. In his presence, I was anything but invisible. Truthfully, that sent a shiver down my spine, as every part of me screamed to withdraw, to halt it all, to safeguard him, to safeguard myself. Yet, I did not. I lingered. I permitted it to thrive. I permitted it to evolve. Me. Every night, as I reclined in bed next to a man who hadn't touched me in months, a singular phrase resonated in my mind, soft as a whisper, yet sharp as a knife. I should have turned my back, but instead, I lingered. The night wrapped the house in a tranquil hush. Julian found himself at a conference in San Diego, where the soft breeze outside caressed the vineyards, weaving a tranquil symphony in the air. I poured a half glass of wine, just enough to ease the silence enveloping me. In an instant, I became aware of the gentle sound of water cascading from the upper levels. The clock approached the stroke of midnight. I had thought Luca was already lost in slumber, but the gentle, persistent sound of the shower cascading from upstairs drifted into my awareness. Upon reaching the landing, I noticed the bathroom door was slightly ajar. A fragile tendril of steam slipped through the slender crevice. I should have retraced my steps. I see that clearly now. Nevertheless, an invisible power held me back. I stepped closer, my bare feet meeting the coolness of the hardwood floor, a wine glass gently held in my hand. I comforted myself with the thought that I was not overstepping my bounds. I was simply making certain that everything was in order. Then I gazed upon. Through the hazy veil of reflection, I caught a fleeting glimpse of him. His silhouette materialized with striking clarity. Luca stood beneath the cascade of water, feeling it stream down his back. His shoulders were taut with tension. A solitary hand lay upon the cool tile, the other advanced with a deliberate slowness, as though weighed down by frustration yet driven by an undeniable urge to proceed. His head drooped, lips slightly parted as though he were attempting to draw in a breath. I remained motionless. Though it was not my intention to watch, I discovered that I was, in fact, doing just that. Not for long, merely long enough for a feeling inside me to twist and pulse. In that moment, compelled by an instinctive urge, he lifted his gaze to the sky. Our eyes met through the fogged glass. Initially, neither of us took a step forward. His expression transformed, beginning with confusion, then evolving into understanding, and culminating in an indescribable emotion. Breath eluded me, a fleeting whisper in the depths of my chest. I refrained from running. My fingers curled possessively around the glass. Moments stretched, drawn out to an intolerable length. Then he spoke my name softly, as though he could hardly believe it. Claire fractured a part of my very being. I withdrew slowly, silently, my heart pounding like the rhythm of a war drum. Upon reflection, I comforted myself with the notion that it was insignificant, just a fleeting look and a momentary lapse. In that moment, those ephemeral seconds wrapped in the haze of steam. In the stillness, the threads of reality began to come undone. He drew near to me the next evening. The house rested in a gentle twilight, shadows stretching languidly across the kitchen walls as the sun sank behind the hills. As I rinsed the wine glass, the soft, tentative sound of his footsteps reached my ears. Claire. I whirled around, the towel held firmly in my grasp. Hello, are you doing okay? He nodded, then he slowly shook his head. May I share something peculiar with you? I lingered in the act of drying my hands. He paused, his fingers gliding along the nape of his neck. It revolves around my experiences, exploring the reasons why things often feel misaligned for young women. My heart raced, a thrilling surge of anticipation coursing through me. I fear I may be simply too grand in scale, he whispered, his eyes glued to the earth beneath him. It lies beneath, sending shivers down the spines of those who dare to approach. The words hung in the atmosphere, dense and unpolished. He then lifted his eyes, devoid of pride or jest, feeling vulnerable, overwhelmed by shame. I have endeavored to grasp it, yet the struggle is excruciating, leaving me uncertain about what is amiss within me. I edged nearer, keeping my voice calm and even. Luca, you are perfectly fine just as you are. He appeared to remain skeptical. I pulled open the drawer and grasped a small, ancient bottle, hidden away behind the dish towels. Here, I whispered softly, reaching it outwards. This may prove advantageous. He advanced with careful deliberation. Our fingers brushed against one another. It was at that precise moment that it happened. Everything has undergone a metamorphosis. The silence grew more profound. His hand hovered over mine, a gentle presence that seemed to defy the passage of time. Our eyes met in a delicate dance. He whispered, uncertainty lacing his voice, "I'm not sure how to use it. Would you be so kind as to illustrate that for me?" My breath hitched in my throat. A hush enveloped the space, a fleeting instant frozen in time, a moment when I could have said no. In instances where I should have said no, I opted not to. I crept closer. Before I had the chance to speak, his lips brushed against mine. Gentle. At first, a palpable tension gripped me, but before long, it spiraled into utter desperation. My towel slipped from my shoulder, and his hand deftly caught it before trailing down to my back. We pressed on without hesitation. Silence enveloped the room, with not a single word uttered. We merely let it reveal itself in its own time. In that kitchen, beneath the soft illumination of the lamp and surrounded by the quiet of unvoiced longings, a fragment of our souls was liberated. At first, we chose to keep it private. We slipped back into our well-worn routines, moving through the house as though nothing had truly changed. Yet, something had indeed transpired. Everything existed. The intensity of Luca's gaze lingered, a profound sensation that enveloped the moment. Not with longing, but with a softer touch. An unsettling sensation lingered in the air. He started reaching out to me with increasing regularity, asking about where I was and when I would be back home. I continually told myself it was trivial, just a concern limited to us, but deep down, I understood that everything had changed. On a quiet afternoon, Julian extended an invitation for lunch, a delightful rarity. We lingered on the patio of a charming cafe downtown, and for a brief moment, I almost allowed everything to fade into oblivion. As I stepped through the door, I found Luca in the kitchen, pacing restlessly, his jaw tight and his eyes brimming with a stormy intensity. "How was lunch?" he asked, his voice gentle. With a hint of hesitation, I responded, "Nice." He simply shrugged, but the tension in his shoulders spoke volumes. "Everything. I'm simply intrigued by what has prompted him to take you out all of a sudden." I blinked. "Luca is my husband." A laugh erupted from him, sharp and tinged with bitterness. "Indeed, I am the one who genuinely understands you." I found myself at a crossroads of emotion, torn between the urge to embrace anger and the unexpected stirrings of flattery that tugged at my heart. That night, he stepped into my room, not seeking passion, nor warmth, but a deeper connection. He settled beside me, his head delicately resting on my shoulder, his hand tenderly laid upon my stomach. "I think I'm falling in love with you," he whispered gently into the darkness. I remained motionless, taken by surprise by the instant. My feelings for him ran deep, yet they were not of a nature that could endure the unforgiving brightness of dawn. He yearned for something greater. I yearned to feel the warmth of being wanted. In that instant, it dawned on me that I had opened a door, one whose closure eluded my understanding. I had stirred a sensation deep within him. Beyond the mere label of a man, he was an embodiment of profound affection, a soul who boldly expressed his emotions, and a seeker of genuine connection. Nevertheless, I found myself incapable of offering him what he sought. I found myself at a loss, grappling with the challenge of stopping the forward motion of what we had initiated. Furthermore, I found myself devoid of any inclination to pursue that course of action. It began with a simple receipt. As Julian sifted through his briefcase, he unexpectedly came across it, a transaction from a Marriott hotel located in the heart of downtown. It was a night steeped in solitude, a night when he found himself far from the familiar comforts of home. The reservation was not under my name, it was registered to Luca. He casually slid the receipt across the table, treating it as though it were nothing more than a napkin. "What are your thoughts on Luca's decision to use our card for a hotel?" Luca's fork clattered against his plate. My stomach twisted in knots. "Probably meeting someone," Luca replied, his words spilling forth in a hurried cascade. Bringing her here was not something I approached with eagerness. Julian stood completely unperturbed. Would you be so kind as to show me your phone, Luca? He stood still, frozen in that very spot. I declined to participate in this matter. He erupted, slamming the door with such intensity that the chandelier quivered. Julian turned to me with deliberate slowness, his voice unwavering, almost unnaturally so. Claire, he asked. Is there something I should know, as I intended to mislead? I genuinely longed to. Nevertheless, the silence that hung in the air between us had grown too profound to ignore. Then he spoke words that completely dismantled me. I examined the recordings from the cameras placed outside the guest wing, along the hallway, and at the corner near the wine cellar. I observed the manner in which your eyes lingered on Julian as he moved along his path. At 2 a.m., he inquired, "What was that, Claire?" I found myself momentarily speechless, offering only a single nod in reply, and in an instant, all fell apart. He stood in quietude, neither raising his voice nor allowing a single tear to escape. He stood up from his chair, navigated to his office, and came back holding a folder. There, nestled within, were the divorce papers. He meticulously arranged them on the table next to a pen. Place your signature upon them. I kindly ask that you do not contact me again moving forward. Following that, he departed the room. I lingered in that place for what seemed like a lifetime, my hands quivering, struggling for every breath. The walls appeared to close in, tightening their grip around me. Certain betrayals catch you off guard. Breakups need not culminate in the sound of doors being forcefully closed. There are moments when they choose to hold their tongues. Sometimes, everything culminates with a pen, a signature, and a name destined to fade into silence. Luca vanished on the night Julian handed me the divorce papers. Gone, without a trace, simply disappeared. His room lay in a state of stillness for weeks, the toothbrush resting in its holder, a half-finished energy drink languishing on the desk. I would sit on the edge of his bed on those particular nights, waiting for the familiar sound of the front door creaking, the soft thud of his footsteps making their way up the stairs, but he never came. He made his way back. Time meandered at a languid pace. On a restless night, my phone buzzed with a Google alert I had entirely forgotten I had configured. Jay Hartwell found himself in the grips of law enforcement, apprehended for operating a vehicle while impaired in the state of Nevada. I found myself lost in the depths of the screen, my eyes wandering without purpose. His mugshot revealed an unrecognizable figure, bruised eyes, a cut lip, and hollows in his cheeks that had never been there before. I liberated him from his dire situation. He did not convey his appreciation. Failed to welcome me, he asked with a directness that left no room for ambiguity. What has drawn you to this place? Is it simply because no one else is? I whispered softly. He let out a harsh, fragmented chuckle. You no longer possess the authority to assume the role of a mother at this moment. He took the bus ticket I extended to him. Embraced it, the resources. Not a single backward glance was cast. That was the last time I beheld him. Julian wiped me away entirely, as though I were nothing more than chalk on a blackboard. Silence reigned, devoid of lawyers and raised voices, as a sealed envelope quietly slid under my motel door. Finished. I kindly ask that you do not contact me again in the future. In that moment, I became Susan. Moved to a nearby town. I obtained a role at a petrol station situated along I-80. The nights seemed to take on a more bearable quality. Fewer faces, fewer questions, free of any makeup. Shortened my hair to a more manageable length. I was a stranger to everyone present. That was the only compassion left for me. In the quiet embrace of 2 a.m., my mind wanders to the woman I used to be, the one in the vineyard house, wrapped in silk robes, basking in the embrace of the warm summer sun. The woman whose name resonated in the thoughts of many. At this juncture, I find myself simply a person who made a choice and has been shouldering the repercussions ever since. Some doors, once opened, linger in a state of perpetual invitation. We persuade ourselves that it was nothing more than a transient instant, merely a brief look, just one ill-fated evening. Yet, the truth remains that moments carry profound meaning. They etch their presence and, at times, alter the very fabric of existence. Individuals often ask if I experience regret, as though regret carries with it a semblance of salvation. Honestly, I'm uncertain. I yearn for the sound of Luca's laughter. The recollection of Julian's soft humming as he meticulously shaved remains etched in my thoughts. The melodic chime of wine glasses meeting in the kitchen and the soft whisper of sheets as one succumbs to slumber are profoundly longed for. Yet, above all, I yearn for the person I once was, before the facade stretched on endlessly, before the lines blurred, before I deluded myself into thinking I could change the game without facing the consequences. It appears that ruin pays no heed to the desires behind our actions. It continues to show no concern for your solitude. It remains unmoved by your ignorance of how to stop. It utterly annihilates. It devours everything, then quietly watches the remnants of your existence in the wake of its passage. Some mistakes provide no wisdom beyond the skill of living alongside them. Some methods of punishment remain subtle. They reveal themselves slowly, without a sound, and etch enduring impressions. In the end, no matter how frequently you find yourself returning to that moment in your thoughts or how many what-ifs flit through your mind, the truth remains steadfast and unaltered. Your choice has been made, and now it falls upon me to determine my own. Here I find myself, Susan, laboring through the night, pouring coffee for truckers, concealing the tremor in my hands as the memories of that fateful night surge back. All sensations surged with intensity, strikingly unique and thrilling. Had you been in my shoes, would you have opted to withdraw before the situation grew too intricate? We invite you to share your thoughts in the comments section below. Have you ever found yourself poised on the edge of a decision you instinctively recognized as misguided? Have you encountered a tale that unfolds in a manner akin to this? Are you daring enough to reveal it? Sometimes, the most profound truths are the ones we struggle to voice.